Welcome to Rick's Scale Model Fix and part 2 of our 1/48 scale Tamiya Bristol Beaufighter TF Mark 10. At the end of the last video you'd have seen me join the fuselage halves together, so these have been left now 24-48 hours just for all the plastic to harden after the application of the glue. I've started cleaning some of the seams up and built up the tail. So I'm going with the model. I've decided that the one I'm going to do has the fin fillet, so this slides in and clips in place like that. Now the fit wasn't fantastic, it wasn't bad, it was certainly adequate, but as hard as I might try, I cannot get a perfect fit on both sides. We're nearly there, so we just needed some sanding of the rudder post and the mating surface there. So we're going to need a Mr. Surfacer application along those joints just to make those good. So I'll carry on cleaning up these seams. I did notice a couple of sink marks, but nonetheless the fit is pretty good. So we're just using a Flooring Models dual sander. We're using the sponge side just to work that seam and remove any of the glue. Quick fingernail test. A little bit there. So you don't want to be sanding too much away from the arch of the cockpit, because otherwise you're going to interfere with the fit of the clear parts. So we'll stay away from that bit. And wet wipe just to remove the dust. And that's all that's needed there. Panel lines are still quite noticeable. We don't need to do any rescribing, but we are going to need a bit of filler for those sink marks. So that's the upper surface done, and we're going to repeat the process now on the underside. And just turn it over for the rough side there a little bit. We've got a bit of a step. A bit of a step there near the tail wheel bay. So just light pressure on the sander, letting the sander do the work. By using the sponge side, we're not going to create any flat spots on the fuselage. We might need a little spot of filler there, not much, just where my thumbnail is, and just at the tail wheel well there, might need a little bit of extra work. So the fuselage sanding and seam preparation is done. So the next time we have a look at these seams will be under a coat of primer. It might be just an odd spot of filler required, and that observer's access panel door that we glued in the closed position. It's a perfect fit with just a bead of Mr. Surfacer up each side to blend it in. So we're going to add the tail. So in the first instance we're going to attach this with a bit of super glue so we can get a really good fit at the rudder post, because there's a bit of a spring in that. So we'll just add some super glue to the rudder post and to the top of the tail there, and then we're just going to press this in place and get a really good fit, tight push down, and let that super glue grip like so. And then we've got the springiness in this fin fillet. Now as you can see on this side we have a more or less perfect fit, but on this side we've got a little gap. It's nothing major and it's nothing really worth getting too worried about. So in the first instance we're going to put in some Tamiya quick set liquid poly. And I'm just going to gently tighten the fit up. I don't want a big squelch of glue coming out of there. And I'm just going to hold that in place. Then we're going to repeat on this side. Just making sure everything is now as it should be, and we'll put some liquid glue up the rudder joint just to secure it, and we're going to just set that aside to dry. So we're now going to add some Mr. Surfacer into this gap, and we're going to put it on quite liberally, and we want it to flow in to the recess. You don't need to be neat or tidy. Remember, we can get this off without damaging the plastic using IPA. The idea is to just get it to flood the joint line and self-level on the top, which it's doing quite nicely there. And as that dries, that'll shrink, and then we can come in with our cotton bud soaked in IPA to make the seam look nice and presentable once this is dried. This is going to take a while to dry because we've layered it up, and it does shrink quite noticeably. So it's probably going to need another application. So we just work that in, and it's all self-leveled quite nicely there. So that's the fuselage to be left alone now for a good few hours to dry. Put it somewhere where it won't get in the way. We're moving on to the wings now, and there's quite a lot of information to be noticed here. First and foremost, B2, the lower surface of the wing, we need to drill and open up 2 holes, and that's for the rocket rail pallet. And then we need to block in the cannon ejector chute, shell ejector chutes on one side, and also fill in the gun barrels, and that's for both sides. The fit of the wing is perfect. It builds up really well, and considering this kit was $19.99, the fit is absolutely fantastic. The wing is in 2 parts, as you can see there, but the join is virtually unnoticeable with a bit of care. So we need to fill these cannon bays, and I wasn't too fussed with the fit of the blanking plate G14 for these ejector chutes, so I'm just going to mask that square off and just put a bit of Tamiya putty in there. So intriguingly, it doesn't say to block up the other ejector chutes, so we shall just do these, and we're going to do them one at a time because there is a panel line running through. So just mask off a little square, like so, and then we're just going to add our filler just over the top, making sure it's flush with the masking tape. Remember, it's filler, so you want something to just sand back, and we're going to leave that to dry. Again, on the other side it says to fill the inboard most ejector chutes, so we shall do that after the wings have been glued together just like this, and we need to fill in all the cannon bays and we'll do that once the wing's completed. So we need to open the holes for our rocket rail pallet, so I'm just going to get a mini drill. This is, I think it's 1mm, and just in this hole here we're going to try and get it in the centre and just open that up. And it's again this one, and we're just going to open that up, and then using a cheap eBay reamer or file, we're just going to push that through the hole until it's the required diameter. Like so. Going back to the outer surface now, and you will notice we've got two like ridges of plastic around those holes, so we can just trim those off with our knife, leaving a nice hole ready to fit those rocket rail pallets later. I'm just going to trim these up. Careful of that fuel dump pipe, we don't want to break that off. When we talk about tolerances and fit, just make sure that you do clean up the mating surfaces of these wings, as there was a sprue attachment point. Now luckily it's quite a way down, so you can just trim that off without affecting the surface that it butts up to. And again on this one, on the upper surface, it's on the lower surface, so you can just go in there and just remove that without worrying too much about this upper surface, which is the visible joint. We're just going to offer these up to each other, offer a test fit. Fit is quite nice there and perfect, so it's all lined up. So we're going to use Tamiya white top. And just get a nice coat on this strip. Just gives a bit more working time to get everything where it should be. Make sure we get everything lined up. So I've just taped up the wing section, and we're going to add that now to our centre section, and again the fit is perfect. What you will notice just here is there's a gap where the outer wing and the inner wing meet, and that's quite simply taken care of by very, very slight downward pressure just to close the gap, like so, once that the wing is actually joined together, and that just disappears along a panel line. So again, Tamiya white top, because it just gives that little bit longer drying time. And we'll just put some round the front of the nacelle, and the rest we'll do with quick drying. So we're just going to line these up. Just quickly noticed there that I still got a little bit of a sprue attachment point, and we'll actually just put some glue along that seam, making sure I've got none on the fingers, and we're just going to clip this into place. No fuss, no messing about with these Tamiya kits. Where they might be lacking in surface detail up to today's standards, you certainly make up for in speed of build. And if you ever want just a quick project, just to sort of clear your head, or a palette cleanser if you like, they're perfect for this. So we'll just make sure everything is in position. which it is. And then just as a quick check, we're just going to offer this up to the fuselage just to make sure that there's nothing massively untoward with the fit. And we've got a tiny gap in that wing root, but the fit is perfect, and I think it's just becoming quite apparent now of the size of the Beaufighter. So we're just double checking, and then we're going to get our quick set in here. Just making sure it's all lined up. And actually that panel line, it's closed under its own sort of work, if you like, with a bit of glue that we put in, so that's fine. Don't need to do anything with those. So again, they can be put to one side to dry thoroughly. So we'll just tidy the workbench quickly because it's getting a bit untidy with everything that's going on there. So we've got the main assemblies of the kit done. So we have that fuselage with that tail. So once that Mr. Surfacer is dried thoroughly, we can remove that. And we have the wings, which can slip in like that. So there we go. So there's still a few little bits to do, so I'm going to just do the tail planes, glue those together, and then we'll start looking at tidying some of these seams up and getting the main assembly done, and even thinking about a first coat of primer. So while we're waiting for the glue to dry on these wings, I've set about filling in these cannon bays. So rather than putting a blob of filler in, I thought I'd use heat stretched sprue. So if you're one of our younger viewers, then please ask a parent to supervise you doing this. So cheap lighter and a bit of the kit sprue. So just get it till it curls up on itself, and then extrude it gently. There's a bit of trial and error to see if these are the correct diameter, and then we just offer it up to the hole, and that's too small. So there is a bit of trial and error involved in this. So they're too small, but as you can see, the results are like that. And then we can glue these in and just snip the ends off and sand the leading edge smooth. So I'll do that. I'll finish those other two, and then we'll have a look at the tail planes. So there's all 6 gun ports filled, and that's just been flooded with Tamiya extra thin. And we're just going to bob these down a little bit, and then what we'll do, once this glue's been allowed to fully dry, we'll snip those off and sand the leading edge, and any then small imperfections we'll fill with the filler. So the last parts of the airframe that needs construction are the tail planes. These are traditional upper and lower sections joined together. I've already cleaned up this face using preferred flooring model sander. See me use these a lot. They are quite good, they last a long time as well. I do like the sponge side because it doesn't remove the contour of the part that you're working on, much like solid flat side would. So they're ready to be added to the model. Just on note about these sanders, if anyone's interested, I use the blue medium sanding sponges, so it's got sponge on one side, sanding stick on the other, and that's pack FMS024. And another handy one to have, you've probably seen me using these in tighter spaces. So these are the skinny stick set, there's 16 in there, and that's FMS012. Both available from the Flory Models website or PM Models. So that stretch sprue that we put into the cannon holes, if you like, in the wing, has been allowed to dry thoroughly, cut back and sanded. Put a bit of Mr. Surface around them as well, just to make sure, so the next time we have a look at that seam under primer, hopefully there's not too much to do. I painted the centre section interior green, and I'm just working my way round, so we need to just take care of this seam on the inboard side of the nacelle and repeat the process for these other cannon blanks on the port side. So we'll just work on this. It's going to be easier to do any seam repairs or filling without the wing attached to the model. So we're just going to come in with the skinny. Actually, we'll probably get this one in there. We're just going to work that seam just like we did with the fuselage. And we just got a little bit of a step there on that side. And that's that repair job done. Going over to this side, and we're going to just take care of these cannon stubs. So using a quite coarse sanding sponge just to set the tops down before we swap very quickly back to the favourite. We're just going to work that leading edge like so, keeping it clean. And there's the results within minutes. So I think we're getting to the stage where we need to think about joining the wing to the fuselage. So I've painted up the crew access ladder. We'll just snip the bits off, and then this goes in from this side in this sort of fashion, and then it's Tamiya recommend that you put a bit of tape just to hold that in place, which will oblige. And then at least we've got the option of having that one open. So there, the wing's pretty much done. We just need to add the clear parts to this, but we'll do that once we've primed. So we're just having the last little check, and we've got a little bit of glue that's come through there, so we'll just take care of that, just like we did when we were dealing with the fingerprint. It doesn't take long to eradicate any signs of that. Everything looks pretty good. Now I have wiped the plastic over with some IPA, and that just removes any residue from the masking tape and also makes sure the plastic's grease free and clean. So we've just got our blanked off ejector chutes to just quickly finish off. Just give the whole broader area a bit of a polish just to blend those in. Use a wet wipe, and that's just to get the crud out the panel lines. I think we'll say that that's good enough. So that's the wing, like I said, pretty much done. We're going to come back to that when we need to join the fuselage together. Fuselage wise, we have our seams of Mr. Surfacer down the fillet that we now need to take care of. So we're going to use some IPA just going to put some into a little dish. And then we're going to start working the seam. So we're just going to take our time, just working with the cotton bud until the Mr. Surfacer starts to dissolve again. And once it starts going, it goes pretty quick. So after about 20 minutes work, we've got some lovely seams there without damaging or even touching any of the plastic, and that'll look great once it's been primed and painted. You'll never even know it's there. So we're going to add the tailplane units now. So these are keyed, they will only go one way, like so. So making sure that you get them the right way up. The fit is a little bit on the sloppy side. I don't think they key together to make a solider or a more solid fit, but they do actually interfere with each other, so they're pushing each other out there. So what we'll do is we'll just sand the edges of these slightly. And we're going to go with the fit, the best fit along the upper side of the fuselage, just in there. So we're going to use super glue for this. So we've got our tail on, like we saw in the last segment, and I've attached the wing, and the fit is pretty good all round. We've just put a bit of masking tape from wingtip to wingtip just to close the wing root up slightly. And then underneath we might just need a little bit of sanding just to blend the centre section in. So that needs to be left to dry overnight. So in the meantime, our aftermarket stuff has arrived this morning in the post. So we've got a set of seat belts from Edad, canopy masks, some exhausts, because the ones in the kit are pretty poor and they're from, I don't know who's done them, metallic details, and the aftermarket decal sheet. So I was intending on doing the upper scheme on this one from Operation Fire Dog, but it has the intake that's at the top of the cockpit. That's not included in the kit. So I might have to have a look at seeing if I can just scratch build that. If not, we'll choose an alternative option that doesn't employ that part, and we'll see how we get on. As always, the decals look lovely, but more of that when we get to that stage. So while the wings are drying, I've made a start on the engines. So we've painted the cylinders MRP exhaust metal, which is 148. Painted the tops of that, the crankcase, in gloss black, and the front of the engines in guns tyre black for a bit of a visual difference. So we need to build these up, but we need to give it a wash first. So we're going to use Tamiya panel line accent in black for the cylinders, and we're just going to apply this just over each of the cylinder banks, and it'll just bring out the detail. So while we were waiting for the wings to dry, I built up and painted those engine nacelles. I don't know if you can see in there, it is quite dark. So like we said, we gave those engine cylinder blanks a wash, as we saw, and then I've just gone round and done the cowl rings and exhaust with Alclad jet exhaust, which is a dark bronzy colour, and they're ready to be assembled. So we'll just give this a gloss coat, I think, just to seal it in, because that's going to have to be masked, and then these are going to have to be painted the fuselage colours later. So we've got the wings on the Beaufighter now, and I'm just working on these wing roots just to remove any glue marks. So again, using another Flory Models product, which is one of their green and white weathering sanders, polishing sticks. So we're just removing the glue marks and polishing the plastic up, and we don't need to use any filler on these wing roots at all. Everything has closed up really nicely. So we just want to get rid of any uneven texture that the glue's left, and polish the plastic up to match the surrounding areas, so that it doesn't give a different effect to the primer when we apply it. And we'll just polish that side up. And there we go, that's the remedial work done there. So it's quite a big model, as you can see. So where we're at, we've done the intakes to the leading edges of the wings, turning our attention back to the model itself, and there's not really that much more we can do before we prime this. So we need to decide on a variant that we're going to do, and also we're going to need to start looking at attaching this canopy glass to protect the interiors. And just before we do that, we're going to have to just spray these areas cockpit green before we put the glass on. Also, before we put the glass in, we're going to have to fit those Edard seat belts as well. So that's the cockpit glass added to the Beaufighter. So that's going to draw a conclusion to part 2 of this build. I hope you've enjoyed following along. In part 3, we're going to look at getting a primer coat on, doing some basic surface preparation, and hopefully at the end of that we shall get the camouflage colours onto the airframe. So join me then. Until then, please look after yourselves, stay well and take care.